All right, and I'll keep admitting people. Well, welcome everybody. This afternoon, I am delighted to welcome you all to our continuing workshop series on preparing for faculty job applications. And I'm really excited to introduce our workshop presenter today, Dr. Phyllis Brodsky. She's going to be talking to you about creating ePortfolios and an online presence. Dr. Brodsky is an associate professor of practice with the Office of Instruction and Assessment, which I now actually have the correct name to. It's now known as the University Center for Assessment, Teaching, and Technology, or UK. She has a Bachelor of Science in Rehabilitation with a minor in Special Ed and a Master's in Special Education in the Severe and Multiple Disabilities program here from the U of A. Here in the U of A, she supports faculty and future faculty, so that's all of you, in the successful integration of pedagogy, which is much of what everything she talks about is based in this, with instructional technology on behalf of student learning. And she talks about things like slide design and data visualization, storytelling, building communities and online courses, social media, online presence, universal design for learning, and ePortfolios. She's the program coordinator, and so was very instrumental in the design and development of Project Focus, which is a U of A program created to support students with intellectual disabilities so that they can access inclusive opportunities in higher education. She also works as an iOS app designer, creating apps to enhance and enrich the lives of people with disabilities. She's an Apple Distinguished Educator, a certified Google educator, and an expert in universal design for learning, which guides the design of learning experience to proactively meet the needs of all learners based on brain science and evidence-based educational practices. And I am thrilled that she is here with us today. So welcome.
Thank you. That was a lot. Phew. I'm glad we got through that. And I have to say, I actually am not a doctor, so I don't want to be insulting to anyone who actually has a PhD when I do not, and that's okay. Also, one thing to know about me is that I'm super casual and not a serious person at all. You might have been able to tell by some of the things I've been up to. So I'm glad that however many of you are here, 23 of you are in the room right now to learn about ePortfolios. And it's my hope that you will leave the session really with a sense of how you may, if you desire. Some of you may just be here to think, do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? Should I do this? So whatever your pathway is, I hope this will support some of the things that you hope to do. And for this session, it doesn't matter if you've never had any experience with web design, web development. And in fact, in our Certificate of College Teaching program, the capstone project is an ePortfolio, and many people have never done web design. So there's great tools now for you to create websites that won't make you cry. So that's my goal. Like if it makes me cry, such as my promotion process, that made me cry. Anyone want to talk about that? I'm happy to. So really, we're going to spend the time doing these three things. I'm going to start by just having you think about some things. That is kind of my blah, blah, blah part of the session. And then we're going to look at some things together, and then I'm going to have you look at some things. And I really think that there's a much deeper learning that takes place by you exploring things, talking to your peers about it, than there is with me just information dumping to you. That said, I will do some information dumping at the end of the session with a document that I'll share with you that has tons of resources. A lot of the stuff I'll be mentioning here. So that will be, now in your future information dump, if that works for you. All right. So when we talk about ePortfolios, you may have heard the term, and it's got a lot of different ways that people use the term. So the university is now doing both developmental and assessment-based ePortfolios. Students collect work over time to show their development. Students show different things in terms of their success, but we're talking about a showcase. You are the showcase. You're promoting, selling, displaying, explaining you. So this is showcase all the way. Just a couple quick figures, and I apologize. This is 5 years old, and I hate showing data, especially data that's pre-pandemic, because so much of the data has changed. But just to give you a quick glance, people often ask, do employers even look at ePortfolios? And the answer is yes, most definitely. but it is also discipline and industry specific. So these numbers are not limited to higher education only. So that probably would be a different number. What I can say, both in my experience and my reading, is that it's growing and it's going to keep growing. And so my question that I always ask people with technology is, do you think it's going to go away? Because, if it's going to go away, if it's a trend or a fad, then why spend the time learning it? And so is it going to go away, or is it just going to increase? And I feel pretty strongly it's just going to increase. We're going to have less and less paper and more digital artifacts. Another thing to think about is your online presence. And I will speak in a little bit, just briefly, about separating out what is your personal life, what is your professional life, and who you are online and what that looks like, and things that can happen. These numbers are of particular interest to me because it speaks specifically about employers looking for you online. And I'm not going to mention any names because it would be really bad politically for my career. But I will say, anytime someone in the university system in sort of a higher level of administration, I always Google them. I always do a search. I always try and find their socials, always. And for me, I've never found anything horrible on anyone, so I'm not sinking my career on that. But I have seen a lack of presence. So if you have a lack of presence, for many of you, it doesn't matter at all. So don't take what I just said as, oh, I have to, be highly visible. No. But I don't know, if you're in a high administrative position, perhaps a presence would be helpful. So there is evidence that that piece of that personal presence can affect hiring, keeping your job. I hired teams of peer mentors in Project Focus for years, and I always did a social media search. And one year we had 2 students who were in fraternities, and we had never hired anyone, not that we had not hired them, but they hadn't applied for the job. 2 young men who were part of a fraternity. And the first one I looked at was everything you might imagine if you were to stereotype that population of people. So it was a lot of parties, it was beer drinking, it was all that. Fine, that's fine. That's your personal life. But if you're applying for a job where you're in a leadership position with vulnerable students, I need to have some sense of your ability to make good choices about what you put out there. So I took it as an opportunity to sit down with both of these guys and just said, and they were both in Eller, which they had no idea. They were like, oh, I didn't know people would look. And it's like, yeah, you guys. And I did hire them and they were lovely. So I was glad I didn't blow them off for that. Just something to keep in mind. I'm going to read this next slide to you. And the reason I'm going to read it is that I do a lot of stuff with slide design, and you all already know this. A ton of text is not the way to go. But sometimes there's something you want to say. So I've got it on a slide. The reason I'm reading it, this is just to sort of model for you, for any of you who are teaching, universal design. So some of you may not, it's time frame. If I say, here's this slide and you don't have time to read it, or any number of things. You may not even be looking at your screen right now, doing something else. I do it all the time in many webinars that I attend. So here it goes. Tell me about yourself is one of the most common first questions in a job interview, especially for those who are new college graduates. When potential employers ask this question, it generally means, give me an overview of who you are professionally speaking. In the modern employment environment, being able to direct the interviewer to an efficiently curated online resume as a part of the answer can mean the difference between the short or long-term resume stack. An ePortfolio provides a highly successful approach to creating such a professional presence and thereby higher selection potential for employment interview. Okay, so now, and Sean, I'm just going to ask you, there are some things, and I'm going to say this to everyone in the room, I will be using the chat. In fact, I'm going to do it right now. So be prepared to put some things in the chat. But Sean, if while I'm talking, if you see something that I'm missing, just interrupt, just jump on in. All right. So I'm going to start by asking you to think about the way in which we make first impressions. Okay, so first impressions, you go to any website, whether it's an ePortfolio or something you're going to buy, that's called the splash page or the landing page or the home page, that first place you hit. And we know first impressions matter. So what's important to think about is whether or not you are making the giving the impression that you want to based on who you are and your work and your discipline. So it's not so much of, is it a great photo of me? It's, does this page tell the people who show up on it something about me that wants, sort of invites them to click and look further. Okay, so splash page, landing page. So I'm going to show you a photo in a moment. I'm going to give you a very limited amount of time to take it in, because that's a splash page, right? That's, you look at the website, I think it's something like 54 seconds is, there's some statistic about the amount of time people spend going through websites, and it's like very short time on the splash page. So I'm going to give you a short amount of time. I'm going to show you a photo. It is a photo of my desk. It is not something I would put on a splash page, but it contains a lot of artifacts. It has stuff because it's my desk and it's a hot mess. But the stuff definitely represents some things about me. So if I were to pick through my office and pull out stuff, which are artifacts, and put that on my splash page, what would that say about me? So you're going to take in the whole thing, but I want you to think of 3 words as you glance at it that you think describes or says something about me or my identity. All right. With that, here we go. And put it in the chat. All right. It's a short amount of time as promised. So what did you pick up in such a short amount of time? Colorful, you betcha. Organized, kind. Theodora, that's an interesting one. And I appreciate that. Just thinking about, how do those artifacts say that to you? Engaged, friendly, colorful, diverse cultural stuff's great. Busy, like that to be a little less. Great. So some of these I'm taking as very complimentary, and some of them I'm taking as, yep, that's definitely me. So what's important about that? I'm gonna flip back to what you saw. Each of you, your eyes landed in different places. Even though this is a landing page, again, I wouldn't really use it because it's way too busy. I tossed it up there. All of you had a different pathway of what you looked at. You looked up, you looked down, you looked to the side. And because it was such a short amount of time, your memory, what you looked at, that's what stuck. And so now I'm just giving you another little minute about what that looks like. All right. So I want you now, we're going to do this for you. And I'm going to, again, ask you to put this in the chat. I want you to think of one color and one object that you feel would represent you well. So one color, one artifact, one thing, one item that you feel like would represent you. And I'm going to give you more than just a second. All right, dark green. I love dark green. And pen. Green plant. This is one of my favorite activities. Green shoes. We've got a lot of greens and blues. Okay, another few seconds here. Okay, so the reason I asked you about a color, I did that with obviously with purpose. Nothing's just sort of random here. Um, the idea of a color can absolutely communicate who we are. There's also colors we think about which are better or worse for a website. We know that there's things about color trends and, graphic design. And, what if everything on my website is hot pink and hot green and hot yellow? Yeah, it'd be, like hurt everybody's eyes and brains, at the same time. That said, so we know there's trends. We know there's some, colors that are more conducive for certain emotions, more conducive for taking in visual information. But I worked with someone in nutritional sciences a couple of years ago. She did an independent study with me for the purpose of creating an ePortfolio. And she came back with her first version and it had pinks and yellows. And so my first glance was like, oh, pinks and yellow, I don't know if I would recommend that. So I said, I'm not so sure about the color. And she said, it really represents what I consider to be healthy food, grapefruit. I mean, she had this beautiful grapefruit that was yellow and pink in the middle. By the time she finished her ePortfolio, I was like, okay, I so stand corrected, because her colors spoke about her and her work. It wasn't like it was just a website to sell some stuff. It was a website that was really what you all are here to learn more about. It was an ePortfolio for her in the job market. So I stand corrected on colors, but we still want to think about them. And then thinking about the object really then points to, how do we represent ourselves? What if I was a brand? What if my career was a brand? What if the kind of job I wanted was a brand? So how do I represent that? And how do I, and this one's a little trickier, how do I represent it throughout my ePortfolio? Because my ePortfolio isn't just that splash page. My ePortfolio are all the pages that are attached to it. So if, for example, Caroline, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, green bird. So if that bird is something really that says something about your work, your body of work, your research, then do I have that as a theme? Is there sort of a thematic part of that bird throughout my web page? It doesn't mean you have to have the same bird everywhere, but I'm just giving you that as an example. All right. So I'm going to pull up a couple of websites here in a moment. And what I'm going to do, both of these are from our Certificate of College Teaching program. Both of these people allowed me to do this, so I applaud them both. It's always a little vulnerable to show ourselves to the academic world, hashtag imposter syndrome. So I'm going to just talk about it. I'm going to click through it, and I'm going to talk about some things that I think are important, both in the things that we'll see and in some of the things we won't see. So I'm going to tell you, just for me, sort of stepping back from this slide, which has a little too much text, I'm going to look for first and foremost navigation. First and foremost navigation. So my ability to click through a website, you all know this. This is not anything new. You click, you end up somewhere, you can't go back, you don't know how you got there. Done. As soon as that navigation thing hurts our brains are already so overloaded, we don't have time for that. So navigation really matters. Can I locate your CV no matter where I am? So for example, can I be looking at it and then go, yeah, okay, I've seen enough. I just want the CV. But I've gone to several different pages now. Do I have to figure out how to get back to get your CV, or can I get it wherever I am? Also, how do I contact you? So is that its own, also someplace, no matter where I am in navigating, that I can say, okay, saw the CV, not going to have time to look at the whole site, but how do I get a hold of this person? And so that's one of the things I'll look for. And then I'm not going to do this for today, but we want to click on all the links. And I can't tell you how important that is. And even when I do the work I do, even 4 months later, if I've created materials, I have to go back in. Those links just break. They just break regularly. So we have to make sure that stuff is working. And then the overall design, like, does it kind of the little exercise we just did with the artifacts and representing, do we get a feeling? This is purely emotional. What do you feel? Completely emotional. What do you feel about the person who is representing them? And if you are inclined, think a little deeper about why you think you feel that way. So feelings are subjective. The image that I showed you of my office, completely subjective what you looked at, and you had different feelings about it. So it's not like I could get one thing like those little troll dolls and say, hey, these troll dolls, they represent me in some bizarre way. And so everyone in this room would have a different way that you might feel about that based on your previous life experiences, your generation, lots of different factors, whether or not those would be meaningful to you. Okay. So give me just a second. All right. So this is Susan's homepage. So again, she made this through for her capstone for the certificate of college teaching, but I do know that she's using it, and she has used it, and she has kept it up, which makes me happy. So here's her splash page. Got her name, got the places where I'm going to click in a minute, and powered by Weebly. The reason that shows up is that she hasn't paid for her domain name. So that's fine. There's nothing you have to worry about that. But here it says Weebly.com. Maybe she could have SusanWashco.com. But that, again, down the road, by the URL, domain name, all of that. Don't worry about it. Okay, so I'm going to do the quick. This is what I always do. Where's her CV? All right, I can see it. It's right there. I'm going to click on it first. All right, and so she's got a theme here already. Even if I don't know her discipline, there's some outdoor spaces. She's used a very clean font, and nothing. So I can't emphasize this enough. If I say something like it's a clean font, that doesn't mean all of you need to have a clean font. There's some things about accessibility in our font choices, and we want to have consistency throughout our websites with our font. But based on your discipline and what you're communicating about yourself, that will affect some of those decisions. All right, so here's her CV, and looks great. The one thing I would say for me is I want to be able to click on it and download it right away. So she's put this in digitally, but I want the copy right here. Okay, so that's one thing. Just at quick search, I'm going to go back to home. I don't see an about, or not an about me. I don't see a contact me. So let's just see what happens here. And I'm going to hover and see if any of these have multiple, the drop-down menus. And it doesn't look like they do. These all just look like they're on their own, standalone. So here's an image of her, which is great. And her splash page did not have her image. She really was emphasizing the environment. She's got a nice link here. I'm not going to follow those, and some photos in a really nice way for us to look through those. So, and it's simple. It's not a lot of text. Current projects. And so this is a great example of, it's not the same picture on every page, but it is a consistent theme throughout. A little bit more information here. I'm just going to scroll. And so she's done a lot with images. Let's keep going. This is her teaching part. And she's got an external page. I'm not going to take time to do that. She has embedded, I think this is through Padlet, which is pretty exciting and cool. And so you can embed web apps as well. And I have that handout, the information dump I told you about. That's so K-12 handout. I have a handout for you. It just ages me. So that'll be on there. Previous research. Okay, and all of these are links. Isn't that beautiful? She has kind of a color theme going on here as well. And then her outreach also has some just quick examples of her work. So one thing is, I know Susan has much more work than what is in this website, but you don't need to communicate every single thing about you in your ePortfolio. Just this feeling of who you are, what your work is. Can I, as an employer, do a quick look and then focus on, maybe I'm most interested in outreach. Maybe I don't really know about teaching. I'm not hiring you to teach. I would only be hiring you to teach. All right. So then let's look at Lychee's. Okay, so she's right here on the front. Click for my CV, click to contact me. Can you tell I was her supervisor? Just saying. Okay, so here she is on the homepage. And what's nice about this, she doesn't have the contact me up here, but it's pretty clear that that was on the front page. It wasn't buried. I didn't have to dig through it. The CV, I still would want up here. I still want to see that CV no matter where I go. Now this is great. And this allows me to download it, also great. So having some kind of combination of that CV at the top and the ability to download it if I choose. All right, so a couple things to think about. So when I scroll over here, it's about me, and it looks like background and education is within that. I'm just going to keep doing this. Okay, okay. That's by itself. I can tell it doesn't have a little arrow. Other work. But I wonder if the About Me page is its own page or if it's this. Okay, let's see if I can make that clear. So I click on About Me, and it's different than the dropdown. Okay, so I'm going to show you that again. I click on About Me, but I click on the dropdown, and there's more information, and there's her CV. Well, that's nice, her references. So that's one thing to think about. Often people don't click on the word, they see the drop down and they go right to these, but she's chosen, and again, not right or wrong, she's chosen to do it this way. She's also built in all kinds of things just within that page that I might have otherwise missed. So research statement, I love that she did this so often so that I could download anything I wanted to. Okay, and there's, I like that there's photos of her here. So often when we list our research and our articles and our conferences, it's just text. So this is lovely that I get to actually see her doing the work that is meaningful. Okay, I'm going to shift to teaching. And if any of you want to have sort of an additional conversation specifically about teaching ePortfolios, because she's embedded it into the entire ePortfolio. So this is just a section. If you are looking to teach, then that's a good conversation for us to have. What kinds of things would you put in that show, A, that you have taught, and B, that you taught well? So how do I know that you taught? How do I know that you did a good job? Engagement and service. Also nice. And it looks like she had a link there. Okay. And you can see, again, she's chosen to do consistency with the color and the banner throughout. All right. So what we're going to do now, I love when I stop sharing and I get to see all of your faces at once, even though none of you have your cameras on. Hashtag 2022. No one's got their cameras on. Hi. I'm so like excited to see people.
So Phyllis, a couple things. One,
yeah.
People asked if you could put the links for those two websites in the chat.
I can. And absolutely.
We had a
yeah,
question.
go ahead.
Are there discrimination concerns about having a lot of photos of yourself in your ePortfolio? I know US employers are not allowed to ask for a photo with your CV as the Europeans do, because it creates too much potential for bias.
It does, and that's a great question. And it is a very personal decision about how you want to do that. It's, you know, it reminds me of, what's that TV show, The Voice. and the blind auditions, right? So it's the idea that, can I take this person in? Can I take in their talent without knowing what they look like, how old they are, what gender they are, what kind of jewelry they wear? Just, can I just come to know them otherwise? So that's a very personal decision, I'll just say. For some people feel very strongly that they do not want a photograph of their face anywhere in their website. And that's not going to not get you a job. I don't have research to back that. So it's just my personal opinion, but it's not going to take away. I mean, if your content is well presented, well structured, it's really just up to you. Yeah. Does that kind of answer? I hope that does. Okay, good. Thank you. And thank you for turning on your camera. Okay. Changing gears. So what I'm going to have you do now, I'm going to put the information in the chat, is Sean's going to open 5 different breakout rooms, and you'll get to select which one you want. You're welcome to go into it and come back out. One of you, when if you have a group of like 4 or 5, you might want to screen share the website. So you're going to go into a breakout room linked to a ePortfolio, and then you're going to kind of talk about it and analyze it and look at it in some of the same ways I just did. Is it easy to navigate? Can you find the CV? Is there too much clutter? Is there too much, just all of that stuff? How does it feel? Do you feel like you know the person? Is there consistency? Okay. And while I get those up, uh-oh. Oh, that was a little fail. Let's see if I can do better. Sean, as a backup plan, you have, oh, here we go. Oh, I didn't fail the first time. 2 for the price of 1. All right, so she's going to open the rooms. You have biochemistry, biological sciences, civil engineering, geography, English language, arts, education. I know it does not. There will be many of you that don't fit. It's not about whether you fit. It's just what you want to explore for whatever reason you want to explore that. So go ahead and open those links with the room that you hope to go into.
And let me just say, the first one, just make sure we're all on the same page. I lost it. Oh, I clicked something badly here. Hang on. Room 1. Oops. Okay. Room 1 will be the first one. Okay, now I've done something bad on my computer end. Come on.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. If you teach, or if you teach long enough, you will suffer in the same way. All right.
So room 1 will be biochemistry. Room 2 will be biological sciences. Room 3 will be civil engineering. Room 4 will be geography. And room 5 will be English language arts education. And I'll send out a message with all that information and the websites for each of those to the breakout rooms. So I'm going to create those and you get to pick your room. And I will send this message out if my computer decides to be a nicer computer. I'm gonna just think the website rooms will close in 10 seconds. And
Oh, good. I get to see some faces.
And Theodora was asking again for those 2 websites. Something about the
Yes.
first link didn't work. Something. Or
The
maybe I
2
have-
websites that I demoed.
Yes.
Okay. We'll get to those. Let me do this.
And I'll make sure
This
they
is
go
fun.
out in the follow-up email.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see, this way I get to see everybody's face. Okay. Sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty. Okay. Here's Susan Washko's. And leaf cheese. And Sean, that's fine if you want to add those, like you were saying later. Okay, most everyone's back. Yes, is everyone back? Yep, looks like it. Okay, so we're just going to do a quick reporting out of, let's see if I can do this, just some of the things you discovered. I'm not going to do this in any particular order, so you can jump in, raise your hand or not, start talking, however you feel comfortable. And these are the kinds of things to talk about: the design, the navigation, and you may or may not have clicked on the links, and that's fine, but just kind of how did it feel? And how did it look? And how were you able to get around? Those are the key questions. This way I can see you all. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, so we were group number 5. We did the language arts website. It wasn't accessible for all of us, so I served as scribe, and the team provided a few comments. So in terms of design, on the areas, notable areas, color, they told me that color made them happy, but that was counterbalanced the problem of design, and in part it was the text. It was, some of our teammates described it as heavy, as overwhelming, as disorganized. There was also concern about the photos shared. Photos were shared, but there was concern about whether they were appropriate, whether maybe it was too much. Same with some of the content, whether some of the content was maybe a bit of oversharing, even in areas where, like in volunteer work, the person had shared maybe some unnecessary detail is shared by our group. And then lastly, there was concerns about accessibility, being able not only to navigate the menu, which apparently was in several parts, but also downloadable. There were things that could be downloaded, but they were sort of buried and difficult to reach. So that's what our team had to share about that.
Great. Wonderful. And thank you for taking really such a deep dive into it. And you really posed some of those questions we struggle with. And, you know, do we overshare? And that, which again, I'm going to speak to momentarily about personal, professional, or where the two shall meet. And so we make those decisions, and this person made that decision. Navigation, and thank you so much for thinking about accessibility. I'm not really speaking to that in this session as much. There's a lot to it as far as web design goes, but thank you for thinking about it, paying attention to it, and appreciating and understanding it. Thank you very much. All right. Who's next?
Okay, we didn't get as far. We were trying to take it tab by tab, and I think we only got through the first 2. But
that's okay.
Where we left off was a question of the about me. This was the biological sciences for Jessica Gilpin, and there's a disconnect of timing. It seems like they may have had a postdoc, but the homepage mentions being a senior lecturer. And then the About Me says, I'm an ambition looking for a job, but it seems like there may have been a postdoc and there was concern of that sounding too desperate. But not sure, like the CV was more updated. The CV was updated, but that was at to scroll down to get it at the About Me page. And it's not actually on the research tab, although there's breakdown of some of the things that are on the CV, on the research page. And then it just was like this never ending feedback loop of what goes on the About Me and the research page, like differences.
And yeah, that never ending loop thing, that's a problem. Yeah. And so these are the decisions that people are making. I really appreciate your sort of thinking about whether or not she's presented herself in a way that is cohesive. I think that wasn't the word you used, but sort of that it comes together and doesn't just feel like it's in disconnected pieces in some way. And yes, she missed the CV on the main page. So thank you, Allison, and your team. If you were in a team, some of you were just in a room of one. All right, let's do a couple more. And if you want to talk, but you don't want to turn your camera on, of course, that's fine.
We've got a comment in the chat. Sarah, the color of background looks different from my monitor. I think this is something that we may want to keep in mind, that colors may seem different.
Who said that? Oh, extra points, Sarah. Yes, here's why you get extra points, because it reminded me that it's important to also take a look at whether or not it's optimized for a mobile device. Now, most of the websites that you may use will have that as a pretty good feature, but you always want to take a look on your phone and see what it looks like. And if it's a hot mess, that's a problem.
Can I ask how many of you are doing this on your phone? You can either raise your hand, wave, wink. I'm just curious, because I know many of these do look different on a phone than they do on a website. Nobody's on a phone?
Yeah, well, I think people look at them often on a phone. It's hard to create on a phone. That generally uses more real estate, but looking at it on a phone and certainly knowing that other people might look at it on a phone.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Okay, we have time for one more.
Okay, I think I can share what we discussed. We were the third one, the civil engineering portfolio. And then I think he represents his work really well, but basically at the first page, he said that he has a new current news site. So it is already outdated site. And then if you click the About Me, we didn't check the new site, but sorry, we just checked the old version. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little lost. There we go.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
Sorry, that's my fault.
And you see the headers that it is about and the scientist, scholar, engineer. So it is not familiar to navigate what is his research project and what is different between the engineer and the scientist. And if you click the scholar, there was the teaching experiences and publications together. So it makes us a little bit confused. And then when you click the About, there was a long paragraph about himself. So I think it is not good to look at a glance. So yeah, that's what we talked about this page. But I love the scientist page because he is really well present his project with a photo and the related publication. Yeah. That's my thought.
Nice, nice. And one of the things I like about the variety, and that's why I tried to show them to everyone as we went, those headings at the top are so different. You know, some people do
Yeah.
it very traditional. Here's my research, here's my teaching, here's my, you know, those kinds of things, versus here I am as a scientist, here I am as a scholar, here I am, the person who had the scuba diving. Don't know if that fit or not. But what I appreciate you said is that this is really the page that shows him. And when I look here, so going back, I'm not saying I shouldn't see his face. His face is fine. Nothing against his face. But this is really great. And I still might see him, but this evokes emotion and interest and sort of captivates my curiosity in a way that this does not. So yeah, so thank you for that.
And I'll also just say, can I just say, when you've got a bunch of people like that, it gives a sense of what they're doing is big and important.
Yes. Yes.
Right? So there's a big audience for whatever it is they do, or it's of a wide scale importance of whatever it is they do. So it's just an implicit bit of information that, although, you know, he looks very personable, like a lovely person to chat with all by themselves, having the big broad audience there does connote some different kinds of things.
And Sean, I'm so glad you mentioned it, because here's the word I haven't used, although I think about it, it's part of my world, and that is it tells a story. So those images with all those people doing something interesting outdoors, without knowing the full story, you get a little taste of the story in a way that a profile pic doesn't tell a story at all. Again, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a profile pic. I personally like profile pictures, definitely not necessary. The story is. And so sometimes the picture is part of the story. It doesn't all have to be story, but really what I hope this session is providing you with is just the huge variety of ways you can personally express yourself within your professional ePortfolio. I'm going to just jump ahead to a couple of things. And this really just has to do with planning before you create. Now, some people are just going to jump in there. You'll go to Weebly or Wix. Again, I'll have those in the document that I'll share with you, and just start playing with it. But sometimes it's better, just like a person doing a blueprint for a house or some kind of schematic, to sort of think about, what do I want to have? And there's so many different ways to do it. This actually was an architect. She did such fun stuff. So she had a homepage, a teaching philosophy, she had all these things, and this made sense to her. And in our course, we actually have people do these kinds of blueprints. This was actually for a course I taught, but just an example of a paper pencil, you know, sticking it up on the wall kind of thing, which often works for me. So I did want to speak just briefly about personal, public, and professional personas and presence, online presence. And so this is tricky. That's it in a nutshell. That's all I'm going to say. No, not really. It's challenging because most of us have already a personal online presence. Most of us, if not all of us, already have a digital footprint of some sort. And that's a whole other workshop for another day, or a conversation if you want to reach out to me. So we already have that. How do we build what is our professional presence? So it goes back to whether or not it is important for me to have what I want you to have when you search my name. So is it giving you, when you search my name, is it giving you what I hope it will give you? Or is it going to pull up some past history thing that I don't want to be associated with anymore? So I kind of have this public in the middle where personal and professional collide. And when we're thinking of ePortfolios, it's not wrong to have a little bit of who you are as a person. And that can be done through, you know, as simple as colors, as simple as images. Sometimes it's great to say, oh, and here's all my hobbies. Sometimes it's not. I mean, sometimes I'm applying for a job, no one cares about my hobbies at all. But depending on our discipline and who our employers might be, then sometimes presenting yourself as this well-rounded person who has these outside interests that might be interesting to others might be a part of it. For some of you, it's absolutely not a part of it. So thinking about where our profession and our personal life come together, not just online, but in our ePortfolios, in those decisions we make. Yeah, I personally, and this is again, 100% personal. If I'm looking at your website, I don't mind seeing a little bit about you, not just about you as a professional. I don't mind knowing you just a little bit more through your ePortfolio. But that, just like having a photo, that's 100% a personal decision that you make. I want to talk a little bit about images because as you place images, of course, your own photos, you don't have to worry about, but people put photos from other sources in their ePortfolios, and sometimes they do it without correct permission. So I want to really make clear that when people talk about, Creative Commons, they think that's free and public, and it isn't always. So there are some very specific guidelines we have to follow to make sure that we're either how we're using it. So for example, if I'm selling something on my website and I use your picture, that's a problem. I'm making money off of you. So big, bad boo-boo on that. Public domain, on the other hand, is public and it's free. What I want to say, and you'll notice here, I've given attribution to both of these people for their accounts. I don't have to do that here, but I think it's important. People have worked hard to create photos and create images, and I'm using them. So why wouldn't I give them some attribution? And that can be done at the bottom of your page. It doesn't have to be, these are slides, so it's different. I can just put it on the slide. So Unsplash is one of the sites, and I'm going to show you in a minute some of the others, but Unsplash is one of my favorite for just gorgeous images. And they're all free, and you don't have to have an account, and you just give attribution. So I want to show you, sometimes people, when I've done workshops and I've had a time when I've asked people to look for photos, they go to Unsplash or go to Google, and they can't find, because we're so discipline focused and specific, you might put in a word and nothing comes up that's free, that's in Unsplash. So then thinking about how do you change the language. So when you look at this photo, let me make sure I have the chat up. Tell me what you think I searched for. Great. So computer learning, computer science, computer class, and it was student collaboration. So that's important. So does this show student collaboration? If I had those words under it, maybe it would, but that's what I searched for. It communicated something a little different to you all out of context. But so that's just an example of how to search for something using different words. Here's another one. So I just learned about Flaticon. I have a ton of places I like to go to get images. Flaticon is specifically graphics, not photos. So, and they're beautiful. They're great. And they also ask that you give attribution. And so this also was a version of student collaboration. I like this one, and I actually put color behind it. Can anyone say what might be wrong with this one? The colors are nice, but what might be wrong with that one? No diversity. Thank you. So we have to be really mindful of the images we pick. And sometimes people miss it. They just miss it. They see a beautiful image, they download it, and then later they're like, ah, man, that only represented people with light colored skin, nothing else. Yeah, whereas this one, it doesn't identify anyone. It makes no definition. So that's something to think about. I want to also say that if you have a Twitter account or other social media, LinkedIn, for example, that you're using professionally. So I always say I have a personal Twitter account and I have a political Twitter account. And as far as I know, no one can find me connected to my political one, nor would I ever want anyone to find on my political one. So just making sure if you are using social media professionally, include those in your site. And as long as it's updated. My Twitter account is no longer updated. I was tweeting tons a few years ago. Now I'm tweeting for our department, so my own personal one has kind of fallen away. Also, if you want to search for some just cool stuff, look at hashtag academic Twitter. It's kind of interesting what might pull up. Okay. I think, seems like there was one other thing I was going to say. I am going to put a link to the document. The document has kind of everything you need to know from this session and then some. So it has some of the websites, Wix, Weebly. Oh, I know what I was going to say. When you, I got it. When you use Google to search images, make sure you use the tool that says free for public use. So even searching on Google, most of those images are not free. And as soon as you say public use, you get a bunch of images that you don't like. So make sure that you're using that in that way. Okay.
And Phyllis, there was a question about, do you have any suggestions for free website hosting sites?
Yeah, so that's the Wix and Weebly. That's the ones I'll give you in this document. Google Sites is free. It's super easy. You can create beautiful things with Google Sites. You just don't have very many choices. It's the simplest one to use. It integrates with your entire Google suite. So if you have photos or anything like that, that's a good way to go. Don't have to have many skills to do that. You just don't have many choices. Wix and Weebly are pretty similar. So one does one better, one does other things better. But again, it's an easier platform to use. WordPress, it's a beast. So if you've done some web design and you've got some skills, use WordPress. If you haven't, stay clear. You'll cry. Remember that thing about I don't want you to cry, because the learning curve is steep, and you'll get into the weeds and you'll make a bunch of cool stuff. And so how much is your website style dictated? Yeah, for sure. So the Google is the simplest one. I'm gonna do a share because I had an example. So this is something, again, this is not my ePortfolio, but this had to do with my performance review and my reflection. And I was able to put in a lot of stuff. These are gorgeous. I love them. Those were free from Papyrus, which is a whole other site. But this is an example of what I did in Google Sites. Yes. So yes, the answer to that question is yes, it does. And it can be annoying if you want to do some things and finds out that you can't with that particular site. WordPress is the biggest one, but holy cow. Access once we no longer, oh, such a good question, because I just spent the last 48 hours transferring so much of my Google content. So yes, you will. It belongs, if you have it affiliated with your email account through the university, then pull some of that stuff off and put it in your personal account. Start a personal account. I've spent the last 48 hours doing that because I realized I had a bunch of personal stuff. And at some point, it won't be mine anymore. I'll lose it. Yeah. Thank you for asking that. All right. We've got about 2 more minutes. I'm going to pull that screen back up. So that's the, so tinyurl.com, ePortfolios 2022, or QR code. All right. Well, I'm going to hang out for a little bit if you all want to stay just on board. Otherwise, have a wonderful afternoon. It looks like the sun has come out. And reach out if you have any thoughts or questions in the future. Thank you all.
Phyllis, thank you so much. I am going